Well, thanks so much, Erik, for coming on the Anatomical Gangster podcast. I so appreciate you spending some time with me. I know how much you do, so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
Uh,
dear.
Yeah, so for those of you, I know that some of you might not know Erik, and I kind of wanted to start off with this because I know a little bit about your background, and I'll actually share a little bit about how I actually found you in 1998. But I know that to me, you have one of the coolest personalities of any presenter that I've ever been, in front of, and all of the videos that I had found of yours in the late 90s and into the early 2000s. I still have the VHS tapes and
Oh
stuff like that.
God, you're kidding.
No, I mean,
Thank you. That's so sweet.
it was so influential to me, and I know that one of the really intriguing things about you is that you were in a rock band in college and you had gotten signed with an LA recording band. So what I'm really kind of curious about is like, how did you make the jump from being a performer to being a body worker? I mean, how on earth did that even come to be?
Like most people, an accident. I had a lot of scapular, subscapular pain. I went to a bunch of massage therapists and chiropractors, physical therapists in California, sitting there playing 2 and 4 on the snare drum, in the studio for 7 or 8 hours, and nobody was helping me. And I just ran into this Rolfer. I'd seen Dr. Rolf in 1970. I think it was 71 at Esalen Institute. Our band was playing there. We were actually playing, opening for Janis Joplin over at Fillmore West. And we came back through and we're playing this club in Carmel Valley Inn. And right down so on Mondays, we were on a day off. So I was walking down to the health food store at the highway, Pacific Coast Highway. And as I was walking out, there was a big board. People put all this hippie messages and stuff, and it said Fritz Perls, Ida Rolf, Esalen that night, that Monday night. So I made it down there, but I was late, so it was packed in there. So I got to attend this thing, and I was there to see Fritz Perls because my background was psychology. But I was really impressed by her. So when I got back to LA, I started looking for a Rolfer and couldn't find anybody. And then many years later, I was working at the Health Institute of San Diego, and one of the people on the staff was telling me that they had been Rolfed by a guy in Del Mar. So I just jumped on my motorcycle and started going over there and got my 10 sessions. And the very last of the 10th session, he says, I want you to come in early before your 10th session. I thought he was mad at me, Victor Geber, and he was kind of a dictator kind of guy. And he came in, he says, this is what you need to be doing. And I go, what? And he goes, this. I go, what? He goes, Rolfing. And I go, what? I'm not touching bodies for a living. Are you kidding me? This is not what I never even thought about it. And he said, okay, I knew you were going to say that. If you just, you have to kind of be mentored through. At that time, there was a big selection committee, and it was a hard thing to get in the Rolf Institute at the time. And so I had to go to massage school first. So I went to Mueller College of Massage. He said, just take one course out there and see if you like it, because you just keep coming in with all this information. You seem to be infatuated with Ida Rolf and all this stuff. And from then on, after my first course in massage school, I was completely hooked. I mean, I was so intrigued by the whole thing, and I was really not, and I've never been a real kinesthetic, touchy person, like you are.
Yeah.
Clingy, I always wanted to be, but I never was,
So, you kind of hit on a point that I also think is interesting is you have a psychology, you actually started in a psychology background. I think you actually went all the way to a master's in psychology. Am I right to say that?
You got a doctorate, yes.
Yeah. And I just know for myself how important it is to create rapport with your clients. How much did the psychology help you as a clinician? Do you find that you were using a lot of what you learned in the psychology background into the therapeutic industry?
Yeah, everything you take, you think that you're never going to use some of these things, and they end up all kind of blending together, And I know I wasn't very good in psychology. As a matter of fact, I was really poor. Sitting around listening to people whine was not my deal. I was too busy, active, and hyper. Just hyper, I think, and so it didn't work for me. But but it all works now because that's exactly what we're into right now. All that stuff that they told us and to not do in psychology is hip now. I'm not talking about transference, strictly transference, but I'm talking about back in psychology. You could never have pictures of your family or anything like
Right.
that because none of that. You're never supposed to talk about your background or anything like that to keep transference down. Well, now it's all about that. My clients, I've had a full-time bodywork practice, started out in LA at the Rolf Center of Santa Monica, and then moved here and my practice here in '84, Oklahoma City. And so it's been, the psychology part is just, when we do our 3 months in Costa Rica, the thing I miss most is not Oklahoma and not anything about that. It's just getting back to my clients. I really, really, I'm a, that's my thing is one-on-one. I'm good one-on-one. I don't really like groups that much, but I really like one-on-one.
Well, what's amazing about the groups that I can honestly share is, and I feel so privileged that a couple of years ago, every year you've got this huge event that you do in Oklahoma, and I got invited to help assist Erik with a lot of other amazing practitioners. And I have to tell you, it was so invigorating. I walked out of there so excited to go back, and actually I went back home and I pulled out all of your books and videos and went back through because it really validated so much of what I still carry on today of your work. And just so kind of everybody knows, like my background in the early 90s, I'd gotten introduced to Leon Chaitau's work and also Philip Greenman and his books. And so that was really a solid foundation for me. And somebody who, I don't know, maybe it's because you had that background, had mentioned, do you know Erik Dalton? I bet you'd really dig his stuff. And when I got into all that pain in 1998, I found your Freedom from Pain and this whole aspect of you. I can't even remember what was it called, like posture pain performance. Was that
Yeah,
what it
yeah,
was?
yeah. That
And
was
so
the
it
first
was,
host of 1998. Right?
yeah, that was the first one that I found. And I guess that was in 99 when I found you. And like you were one of the very few people who had videos that you could
Yep.
practice at home, and it really translated over well. And now that I've seen it live, and again, Erik's got hundreds of people who come to these events, and it's not just like some sort of a dry, everybody's working on somebody and it's quiet. It's like a party
It is a party.
at these events where you really get to know one another. There's a whole connection and a vibe that I think you're creating. How, like, has that always been a part of what you've done, that you've really made it such an event?
Yeah, I totally believe that learning has to be fun. The process has to be fun because you're only going to get so much. You sit there and you only absorb so much, and when you try to get too you get tight and your mind does not really open up to the stuff that's going on. When I used to take workshops, when I was going to Michigan State with Philip Greenman, I would sit there and all that stuff was just going over my head. I really had the spinal biomechanics. I didn't really understand it. I was way behind all the osteopaths in class and everything. But finally, I just realized if I'll just sit back and relax my ass a little bit and just take in what comes in and be happy with that, that works for me. And coming from the music business and always being on stage, I realize that it's got to be an entertainment. It's entertainment. It's just like sports or something like that. It's all entertainment. So if it's not fun, then I don't want to do it because I don't really like to teach that much anyway. So
and that's it, is you captivate your audience. You have us at hello, right? And you're always laughing. But the thing about your work too, as much as we're all having fun, you do make fun, you make the learning fun, but you're also bringing in, to me, I think, so many different types of modalities. When I watched you present, it was like Greenman on steroids with like Aaron Mattis's active isolated stretching with much more clinical specificity, the right angles, the right pressure, and really getting the idea of trying to restore function through manual therapy, but keeping your client engaged. One of the things I always hate is like a client wants to take a nap on my table. I'm like, you want to take a nap, go out into nature and go take a nap under a tree. We'll take a nap here. We got work to do. See, can you sort of describe a little bit about how your protocols, like how you actually develop those and like what you're sharing?
Let's see. No, but I tell you, I'm glad you mentioned Aaron Mattis, because he has been a big influence on everybody, and I just don't think he gets enough credit out there.
Truly.
I mean, nobody was doing that when he was doing it. I mean, I'd already taken all that osteopathic stuff and the Rolfing and everything, and went out and did stayed 2 weeks and worked with he and Judy, his wife, and worked at the clinic, and I was into tennis at the time, playing tennis a lot, and he was working on all these star athletes, and I will never forget Monica Seles coming in. She was had just been stabbed by that fan of I don't know, whatever, I can't remember the other tennis player's name, but she was just coming back from being stabbed. So I was telling Aaron one day, I was going, man, all these tennis stars, it's just great being in here, because he had like have 6 or 7 therapists in the room. It's just great being in here with seeing all these people I idolize. Of course, I was way too shy to say hello to any of them, but and I said, but I tell you who I would really love to meet sometime, and just off the cuff, is Monica Seles. I've always just been a huge fan of hers. I love her body, that high-waisted body is just amazing, those legs. And he goes, okay, you're working on her tomorrow. And I go, no, I'm not.
Wow.
He goes, yes, you are. He said, be here at 6 sharp. It's a long story after that, but it was just amazing. I was so terribly nervous, and I'm working on it. And her dad was there, because they were both so fearful, of this big scar by her scapula where she'd been stabbed. And so it's the first time she'd actually been out. And all of a sudden, we weren't making any. I was doing all the stretching, doing all the things that Aaron did for her, not very well. And finally, I don't know, somehow the conversation got on to, I said, really, I got to apologize for this. I'm kind of new. I've been just working at this for a little while. Really, I'm a Rolfer. And she goes, Rolfing? Oh my God, I love Rolfing. Oh my God, I got a Rolfer in Hawaii that I'm just crazy. She goes, all of a sudden we're connected. And her dad, they were speaking their whatever language that was between them. And all of a sudden he's happy now. He'd been sitting there frowning, watching me. So anyway, that's connection with Aaron, and I just have a lot of great feelings about him. All my mentors, everybody, you learn from everybody. And back to your question of how you put it all together, you know what? I just put it together. What's made me successful? What's made me successful over the years? It's like clinical reasoning. You learn clinical reasoning from being in one-on-one with somebody. You can philosophize all this stuff. You can sound so wonderful in your philosophy, but can you do the work?
That's it. It. You have to put your hands on people to actually apply the practice. I'll share with you. That's one of the things about your videos that was always so helpful to me, is I could put your video on, have a client with me, and it really translated over very well. In this last year, when COVID happened, I thought maybe let me take one of these online courses, and I saw one from Baral with, because that's my background, is more visceral manipulation and lymph drainage and cranial sacral therapy, and it didn't really translate over so well. It was too it just was too scientific, like sometimes he gets so wordy on what these pieces are, and he doesn't use, I think he's just not basic enough sometimes where you can really take it in it would just take me many, many months, where for your work, I would work on a friend. And then that week I would work on every single client. I would do the exact same thing just to get good at it. I would just practice it would be one technique. I didn't even care if they needed it. I was going to practice it on every just to get really good at it. But then you started to realize, how do you assess, like you'd use the functional screening, you'd use some of the assessments, you do the muscle testing. And then once I had like about 12 of your techniques in my pocket, you kind of would figure it out what they needed. And that's, I think, the success of my practice, is just that many years of trial and error, where my clients would be like, I don't know, what did you do? And I was like, I'm not really sure, but I wrote it all down. I could let you know later.
I'll let you know later.
It was it was transformative. And one of the things I think that's amazing about you is that you also are, I think, always in a constant state of learning. And I know that your trainings now include brain-based corrective exercises and hormone activating techniques and neuromobilization maneuvers and all of these concepts that you've actually taken from pain science. Is that something, I mean, how are you incorporating that? Like, what is that you're doing now that's putting that in there? I see it in your blogs for sure.
Right. Well, it's back to, God, I've always been more interested in the nervous system. Joint neurology was what I was most attracted to, and I was just thinking about your background, my background, and thinking about Robert Schleip today. I saw this post by Till where he had assisted Robert Schleip, and back in the Rolf days, we used to have the Rolf Lines as our magazine, and we went back and forth, and we were both really into that time into joint neurology. That's when everybody was really hot for osteopathic stuff. And so we used to go back and forth between these things, the laws of spinal biomechanics by this guy named Fryet's laws of spinal biomechanics. Yeah. And so we would write back and forth, argue a lot, Robert and I, and it turns out that a lot of his laws did not hold up completely, but it was still a good format and everything. But the brain-based stuff, I mean, it's just basically, we all know that the brain is overseeing the whole show. If you come in there and you're digging on somebody, and every session you're in that low back with an elbow, and it comes back every session, then maybe you shouldn't be digging it out. The brain's guarding that for some reason, and that's where therapists have to understand. They start thinking, wait a minute, what is this that I'm working on? Instead of just, this is a tight muscle, or this is something between the shoulder blades making it hurt between my blades. If that spasm keeps coming back, you got to go further. You got to figure out where,
that brain pathway. I think that's a big one. Nobody talks about that enough.
No, but and Ida Rolf was really great at that. She was always talking. You never quit a history taking in your sessions. You're constantly talking to them. When you put your hands on them, they're particularly a new client will come in and they'll be in beta brainwaves per second, 52 cycles per second brainwave. But then once you start putting your hands on them, then they start dropping into alpha and sometimes even theta. Sure. And then there's 1,000 times more perceptive in theta. And sometimes, they tell you stuff you don't want to. Okay, I don't want to hear anymore. Some of my clients, they tell you stuff because they have so much more, they have more faith in you or something. It just does something mentally when you put your hands on people. So touch therapy, you have to be careful with it in a way, but you also have to use that during your sessions. You have to use it to coach them. You're constantly coaching up. Yeah, we're going to, dopamine is the anticipation of rewards, and dopamine is one of the big things that we use in our session. So it's anticipation of a reward. So you constantly are setting little goals for your client, like, they've come in, they're having a hard time turning their head and all that stuff. And you go, well, listen, by the end of this session, I want you to think about it as you're driving home and notice how much freer your neck moves. All of a sudden, that's a dopamine rush because that's anticipation of a reward as they're driving home. And sure enough, when they drive home, they get another dopamine reward, and then there's oxytocin, the love hormone, immediately
serotonin, endorphin,
beta endorphins. Yes. So, we have to know why we're being so effective. And with myoskeletal alignment techniques, the only reason that I ever even got into to teaching this, because I was forgetting so many things that I wanted to integrate into my own practice, my private practice. And they always say, just go teach it. If you're not remembering it, just go teach it. And so that's what got me started. And all I'm really trying to do is get people to realize that my 40 years of working on bodies, this is what I've come up with. And a lot of it is technique. And a lot of people complain that I'm too technique oriented and all that stuff. But to me, technique is everything. I mean, I'm a drummer and I play my drums every single morning down in the basement here. And then I got a little band in Costa Rica I play with. And that is something, that I'm constantly on YouTube watching technique videos from some of my all-time favorite drummers. I'll always be technique oriented because
That's
technique
right.
sets you up. You know, back in one thing about the Rolf Institute I really loved, and there's, you know, a lot of stuff did not pan out with the Rolf Institute like it did with the osteopathy either. Uh, but the one thing I really like is I just like that back then it was real important. Everybody knew who had the best hands. Everybody knew who really was really good. And that was the goal, just to really be the best therapist you could be. You know, so everyone wanted to be the best therapist you can be. And there were so many fabulous therapists in the Rolf Institute, and there still are. I
Yes.
mean, that is of all of the body work that I've ever gotten, it's still, you know, some of those old guys, Jim Asher, one of the first ones that I'd have picked, Jan Sultan, Salveson, all of those guys, man, they're just amazing body workers. And I've tried to dig them out of there and get them into more of the, you know, mainstream. When I did my dynamic body, and I went to Serge Grakovetsky was doing the annual meeting at the Rolf Institute in Boulder, and I went there and tried to get Sultan and Salveson and some of those guys to write a chapter in my book. No, we're still dedicated to just doing teaching at the Rolf Institute, which is great. You know, it's great that they do that. But I really wanted to get them out. But I did get Till, who, and of course, he's a fabulous therapist
We love
and
Till. Absolutely.
brilliant guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so and those of you who don't know, we're talking about Till Luca, he's talking about Robert Slipe and some of these other innovators. I mean, those are really top names in our, I think, in our industry. And there's a couple of things that I want to see if I can pull you back a little bit, because it's such a great point. Like, first of all, technique, I think, is, I mean, if you're not practicing the technique, what are you doing, right? But I think there's also this other part about this concept of working on an individual. I think that we get a lot of, there's people who get into camps, and there's a lot of haters out there now that they're hiding behind a keyboard. And there, you know, as fascia has become more of a research concept and people are trying to validate the manual therapy, I call it the neurofascial system. I always say that you have these kind of a superpower couple. You got this autonomic nervous system and the fascial system, and both of them are working together for one thing, is to keep you safe, to support you, to stabilize you, and to send and receive information throughout the body so that you function well. And I'm finding now there's a lot of people who are very hell-bent on saying that everything is fascia or everything is the nervous system, right? You can't, this is why, again, I'm calling this thing the anatomical gangster, is because if all you do is keep piecemealing things apart to then try to define it, as soon as we're starting to try to come up with a definition of fascia, I think what we're doing is we're limiting the potential of what it is. Because what you've sort of pointed out is when you have a hands-on therapist, you're taking frequency from high state stress frequencies, and as you're talking to them and you're calming them down and you're putting your hands on them and you're taking information in and you're listening to them, it brings them down into more of this theta where healing can occur and their bodies can calm down. And then people will say, well, what is it that you did? And I said, to me, I created rapport with my client. I just listened and I was there. I think in this day and age, we're either having to, prove something rather than to just say touch is essential, connecting is essential. And when you're in pain, instead of having a therapist try to explain what they're doing and, again, anatomicize the hell out of you, if we would just spend a little bit of time really not giving our clients information, but to listen and take their information in, I think, and then again, connect with them to say, it's going to be all right. Your body's going to heal. It's going to be, we're going to help this. Let's just stay here in the present moment where change can happen. I think that that's really where transformation is. I mean, you got to come back to that present moment. And I don't think we're teaching enough of that principle of just connecting with people and not having to be the solution solver of your clients.
Well said, girl.
Yeah.
Wow, that was good.
So I'm curious, when you're
Neurostrength.
exactly,
Hey.
and that's another thing. So I don't know if everybody knows this. Thank you.
wrote the foreword for that book.
Yes, indeed. Yes, Erik was a big influence on the concepts that I applied to neuromuscular therapy. And then it was, again, Leon Chaitow's work was very influential to me. A lot of Greenman, but you really were somebody who broke it down. And when I was learning those hands-on techniques of putting somebody in just the right position to get them to activate their hip, to get their body to be in a precise place where I would kind of override the compensation of them, and then trying to apply that in a hands-off way as homework, that's what neurostrength is. And so I really thank you so much for writing the foreword of that, because that to me is the hands-on concepts. If you want somebody to put your hands on you and do that type of work, I think all of your practitioners, that's exactly what they're doing. And so I think that the MELT performance techniques and the neurostrength techniques, this is a complementary thing that people can do at home to then basically keep their bodies in that game of strengthening those neural pathways and making sure that we're allowing our clients to do things for themselves. I think this is important,
Hey, listen, I just want to plug that book again. The original bestseller, Melt. I love that book. It was a good book. It was a great book. But this is a fantastic book. I mean, I read obviously to do a forward to it, you've got to really scrutinize it. And so I had to go through it a couple of times because there's some complex things in there. You start out, you give them, a little fluff, and it's great. But you know what? You always are able to break it down into understandable language too. So you'll get deep, you'll dive deep, and then you'll come back out and you'll dive deep. Anyway, that's really a great one. Did a good job there.
And you've also pointed out you've worked with athletes, and I think that the athletic mind is completely different than regular people. How has it been working on people who have those elite mindsets? What's the difference between working on them and working on, like just a lady who got into a car accident?
In my experience, they don't appreciate you as much.
True.
The elite athletes are so damn spoiled, at least the ones that I've worked on. But they get better because they really do. They're compliant clients. They go home. They do what you tell them to do because they're used to taking instruction. They know how to take instruction. But typically, personality-wise, seems to me like when I worked with Aaron, there was just it wasn't that bonding, lovey thing that I was used to experiencing. But I still like doing that. Hey, by the way, Steve Kerr told me to tell you hello. Talk to him. I haven't talked to him in a while. Yeah.
What a phenomenal human being. Is he feeling better?
Is he unbelievable or what? He's better, but still has the pain from that.
Yeah, I don't know if people know that. So Steve Kerr, he ended up having a cerebral spinal fluid leakage and then went through just bouts and bouts of trying to create fibrin patches. And like 30 times they tried to patch him. And at that point, I said to him, you've got to stop getting people to put needles in you. You've got to change your mind about your body's state. There's no way out of this on that level. And it's going to take time for your body to change. And you're going to have to stop. He kept saying, I just want to go back to where it was. I wish I had gone back. Had I met you guys before that? And I said, there's nothing happening in the past. You can't go back there and get anything because it's over. The only thing you can do is build right now, because that's what's going to create your future. There's nothing in the past that's going to help you now. You got to stay right here. And I just remember him looking at me and he goes, it's the hardest thing to do. I said,
and he didn't take your advice right away, but he finally did. And we'd actually talked about that. He finally did. He finally accepted it. Listen, I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life. I said, not necessarily, because technology changes all the time. You never know, Steve, but that's a good attitude, accept where you are right now. You're going to have headaches every day. You're going to have a damn headache the rest of your life, unless, something technological happens. But I wouldn't keep going under the knife, like you say. At 17 surgeries and I don't know how many patches,
30. I said,
yeah, 30.
How many dates do you have to go on with a girl and decide that she's not the one? Did you do that? He's like, he kind of goes, yeah, okay, I get that. I was like, really? 30, like no more. It's not helping, right? That's not going to do something for you. And I also think that there is the active participation. I think that you do that also. You give your clients homework. And I know that you do that with Paul Kelly, whom I also love, with a home study course called Lotion is Motion. And I feel
Yep.
like he and I are very symbiotic in the same type of thing, and on getting your clients to comply that I'm not a healer. I'm not going to heal you. Your body is designed to heal. I'm just going to open a door and I'm going to give you the tools outside of my practice, and you're going to come back feeling better if you just do these things. And I think that's a really important component. Is that still a thing? Is Lotion in Motion? You guys are still doing that stuff? Is Paul still?
Paul's got a physiokinetic thing. He wanted to specialize in the um, functional movement part of it, and he'd been creating this over time. And so, yeah, we did I think 2 courses together where we would do the hands-on, and then he would do some home retraining and things like that. And then, of course, dynamic body. I had him and the therapist we were talking about earlier before we came on the show here. Nick Kress, who were also showing functional movement stuff more in a yoga type format. I think Till has that Zoga. Is it Zoga? Have you seen that?
Maybe Zoga, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's really good. You got to have some sort of retraining. And, I always give my people 2 or 3 things that I think they'll do. And I usually don't overwhelm them with too many things, because then they just won't do it. And as soon as they come back for the next session, I say, okay, show me show me your homework and let me see how you do it. Because I'm looking for quality of motion, looking not for quantity, how many times you can do it. I want to see how the quality is and what you're doing. So then they know that they're going to be tested. So they usually go home and do some of their home retraining exercises.
That's how Melt became a thing, was that I would give my clients this homework, and then I'd call them in the middle of the week. I'm like, are you doing it? And they're like, oh, I'm going to start that today. And so they kind of say, you can't come back if you can't show me how to do it. They're like, I'm going to do it. I want to come back. And now that we've got Melt on demand, I just point them exactly to the video. I'm like, just practice this 1 30-minute treatment. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. But let's just see when you come back, did you comprehend it? And I'll clean you up when you're here so that you can really perfect the technique. Because that to me is something that you really reined in me, as well as Leon, is that the right position, the right setup, really the right amount of force is what's going to make the change. You can't just willy-nilly yourself into whatever. Really set them up. Take the time to get their body in the right position and then act upon a movement. That's going to help that sensory motor feedback get a little bit more connected where it's maybe a little dysfunctional. So I thank you for that as well. So one last thing I want to talk about. I know that you've got the next Oklahoma event that's coming up in July, and I'm so
can't believe it. You can't believe you're not coming.
One of my best friends since nursery school, Josette, big shout out to Joe, is getting married, and if it were anything else but that, that I would be there. So I think what I'm going to have to do is come down to Costa Rica. When's the next Costa Rica event?
Yeah, we teach that every year, the week following Thanksgiving. This will be our 21st time teaching this. Yeah, 21. You taught it down there too at Pura Vida.
I did. I came right back to back.
Yeah, we just missed that back to back.
Yeah. I got to see Aubrey. He was there one extra day. And I heard that you guys had the rainy season, and when we got there, it was just glorious. But I might need to figure that one out. Are you going to do the Costa Rica event this year?
Yep.
You are doing it.
We're doing it. Yep. Costa Rica is kind of opening. Well, it's been kind of opening up, but they have very few cases, but they haven't done very well with the vaccines either. But anyway, yeah, we're definitely planning on being there in November. And
the Oklahoma one's July, the
4th of July weekend.
4th of July
weekend. Third, I think it's 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. The 4th this year is on a Sunday. So it's great. We have a whole bunch of guest educators coming. James Wozlowski is going to be the featured guest presenter. Yeah. He teaches on Saturday afternoon, and then on Saturday. I don't know if we did this when you were there or not, but we break into a little after the workshop on Saturday. They break into groups, and all of the guest educators are in a selected area, and then people just wander around and ask questions, and you demonstrate your stuff. Did you guys do that year
We
that you
did a
were there?
little bit of that, but you let me come up on stage and
Oh
talk
yeah,
about melt, and people came over and I gave balls to everybody. And
yeah.
it was awesome. I mean, it was really a privilege to do that as well. Thanks for always helping support also my practice as well.
Oh yeah. We got 193 people enrolled in this workshop, and 20 teaching assistants that are coming, and then I think there's 7 guest educators. So it's
Amazing.
going to be a
Well,
blast.
I will certainly see you, I'm sure, in person before the end of the year. I might just have to make that break down to Costa Rica and come and experience that one. I mean, honestly. So those of you guys who are listening to this, again, this is Erik Dalton, and we're going to make sure that you guys know a little bit more about him. And I'll make sure to put some of the info about your events also in the feed, and make sure that we just stay connected. So Erik, I mean, always, you're just such a showman and such a kind human being, so brilliant, so giving, and so loving. I just love you so much. I thank you so much for everything that you brought to my life. I really appreciate you.
Love you back, Sue.
See y'all later. Thanks again, and we'll see you on another Anatomical Gangster next week.